everyone. Welcome to Start Your Dungeons. I'm Adam.
I'm Bryce, and today we're going to be looking at the latest 2023 two-player starter set for Warhammer Underworlds, the miniature game, the ultimate competitive miniatures game, as they say on the box.
So we're going to go through our standard set of questions for a starter box for miniatures games. So to begin with, what comes in the box?
It's a couple of different things. For anyone who doesn't know about Warhammer Underworlds, it's a skirmish board game, miniature game kind of mix. The way it works is basically there's a two hex-based boards placed out, and then you're playing each with your own warband and a deck of cards. So for this one, this is a smaller kind of one than they normally do recently. This is a $60 set, and it comes with the boards you need, the tokens you need, most of the dice you need. It doesn't include the magic set dice in this. They did that with the last starter set as well because they didn't include magic. But these warbands don't need it, so I think that's probably why.
That's good.
Two rivals decks, and the way we'll kind of describe rivals is one of the ways you can play Warhammer Underworld is a rivals deck is a deck that's built for specifically your warband that can be played in tournament play. So there's also in this set two different warbands and a deck for each of them. So there's the Farstriders and the Sepulchral Guard. And what's really cool about this set is, for anyone who's known Underworlds for a really long time, these two warbands actually came out 5-6 years ago when the game originally released, but they did a revamp back in October 2022 of this game, introduced a couple of new ways to play it, and these old warbands didn't have decks that were built with that in mind. So this new set, one, is to get new players into the game, but two, also re-release those war bands with fully functioning decks ready to play out of the box.
Yeah. So what do you think about the quality of the components in the box?
One of the things I'll say is these are the same sculpts from the original set. Now, Games Workshop for a long time has really improved on the Underworld stuff. This is still some of their older stuff. It's not bad, but it is not at the same level a lot of their newer push fit stuff is. These are push fit, which is nice. You don't need glue to assemble them. They go together pretty easy. The Stormcast have a little bit of gapping when the assembly,
like in the shoulder pad,
a little bit. Yeah, I also found that the pegs on the Farstriders for some reason kind of like, I was cleaning them up and they kind of disintegrated almost. Like it was weird. Like they stripped really easy and they broke almost. Different than what I've normally seen. I don't know if I just got a bad batch out of that, but that is something to think. And then the Sepulchral Guard stuff, great. I actually think the Sepulchral Guard might be some of the best skeleton models that GW has ever made for any of their games. And this set is a little flimsy. Be careful. They're very small, tiny bones.
Yeah, don't push too hard when you're assembling.
Yeah. But they are, I mean, they're really nice. And like I said, they're push fit, so they're pretty easy to assemble and put together.
So, how much do you need to assemble to get playing?
You got to assemble both warbands, and that's it. But what's nice is the Farstriders is 3 models. The Sepulchral Guard is 7. Again, they are push fit. You don't need glue. You will need clippers to get them off. But, once you do that, like, that's ready to go. I mean, they're very quick to assemble, too. It took me maybe an hour, and then you're ready to go. It's kind of nice because this game really is built to build a warband, put the warband on the table, pick up your deck, and go. Yeah, and I really like that.
So 10 total models. Yeah. And, so if you've got some clippers, I would also recommend maybe and this is the same for all GW models, a hobby knife is a real good idea because, just every now and then, even clippers can't get the little bits of the leftover sprue.
Yeah, or their mold lines. The mold lines on some of these older Stormcast are sometimes a little bit rough. And then the Sepulchral Guard had a few, but I was actually impressed for being older models. Again, I don't think they upgraded these sprues at all. They kind of just reprinted them in here, but they were nice, really good for that.
Are there any cheat sheets in the box?
Yes and no. There is a diagram on the back that shows you how a turn order plays for the rulebook. We're going to talk a little bit later about how to get into this game and what you need to do that. But there's this really cool playthrough booklet in here that makes it kind of a cheat sheet in a way of how to play. I think the biggest thing for Underworlds is keywords. There's a lot of keywords in this game, and so you're gonna have to memorize those.
Yeah, and those are in boldface on the cards.
Most of them are. So usually when you'll see something on a card, it will say, like, a great example is this thing called Grievous. Whatever it says Grievous 1, that means when you roll a crit, when you attack, you deal +1 damage. That'll be in bold on a card. And usually it's explained on the card as well, but if not, you can look it up in the booklet. The booklet in here is pretty good, I think.
Yeah. Now, as far as the cards, because I know that there are a lot of cards in Warhammer Underworlds, are they easy to follow?
Mostly. So the way Warhammer Underworlds works is you have a card for every character in your warband. It has a regular, uninspired, and inspired side. And what happens is basically as you play the game and you meet certain conditions, your characters will inspire, get better stats, get new abilities. Those I think are pretty easy to understand. You've got their move, their defense, and their health right at the top, keywords, and then their attacks. I think they do a pretty decent job with the attacks. A lot of it is symbol based, but it kind of makes sense when you're looking at it to kind of be like, oh, this is my damage, this is my range, this is what I need to roll on the dice, because they'll say like how many dice you roll and then tell you like, oh, you need swords or you need hammers to be able to get a hit in when you roll to attack, or if you're defending, I need a dodge or a shield. That's, I think, pretty easy to understand. Where it becomes more difficult is when you look at your deck. So you have two decks that you play with Underworld. You have your objective deck, which is 12 cards that you are trying to score by completing objectives in the game. Those can be anything from killing a model to standing on an objective for a certain amount of time at the end of a turn. There's a lot of really kind of like different things there, and there are some finicky words sometimes with that. And then the other deck you have is what's called your power deck, which is 20 cards. 10 of them are upgrades, and 10 of them are what are called gambits or ploys. Gambits or ploys are like one-offs usually. They usually give you a thing like you get to push a model or roll an extra dice. Where upgrades are things like extra wounds, new attacks, new abilities, that sort of thing. I think that one of the things that makes Warhammer Underworld so great is the card system and the deck building, because you can deck build in one of the ways you can play this game, which is called Nemesis or Championship way. And that's really, really cool. But I do think starting out, it's great that they have the playthrough book, because there is some finicky like timing things I think with cards sometimes.
That seems to be, whenever we've played, that seems to be the thing that I have gotten hung up on most of the time. It's when am I actually doing this?
Right.
So, I have to defer to you. It's like, okay, so tell me when I can actually play this thing. But
and
for the most part, things make sense. But timing, I think, is one of the things that.
Yeah, I think it's weird too, because sometimes there are cards that give you bonuses that you want to play. So basically, the way the game works is there's only 12. You only make 12 activations, and your opponent makes 12 activations. That's it. So it's 4 activations over 3 rounds. So you get 12 actions and you're done. That's the entire game. So a lot of it is about how do you build an economy of being able to take the best possible actions in this game, which is what I love about it. I love the deck building. I love the way that it makes it really strategic and how you play the game and how you score and how you're trying to win the game. But I think there are some things where it's like, well, this card, like, do I want to play it now to give myself an extra dice? No, I'm going to wait till your turn to play it, so that way at the end of your turn, it'll be my turn to do it. There's some funky stuff like that. I think they did a better job with this set about trying to cut down on that. But that is something that kind of occurs in Underworld at times, where the good thing is Games Workshop does put out FAQs for this and kind of help explain some things. They do them about every 6 months, so that is nice. But that would be probably the big thing, I think, really, that may trip you up a little, is just when to play cards. And like most objectives will tell you when you score them, but understanding that is also kind of a key part.
Yeah. How easy is it to get into this game?
So this one is different from every other one they've ever released in that there is this amazing playthrough booklet, which actually takes you through an entire game of Underworlds. and
just does it as a tutorial.
Every step. So it is
nice.
really cool because it says this is what you'll draw for your starting hand of gambits and objectives. It tells you how to move the models, when to roll dice. It's weird because it's very on rails for some people, and that might be weird to them. But I really, really like it because there's a lot of actions that you can take in Warhammer Underworlds. You can move, you can charge, you can attack, you can barge, you can shove, you can... There's so much you can do in basic actions, about like 6 or 7 of them for people. And then you have your special abilities as well that you might be able to do. So having that ability to kind of go through a whole game where no one needs to know how to play, and it shows you that, is really, really nice. Like, I wish Games Workshop did this more with other boxes. I don't know how easy it would be, but the way this is done is so nice to be able to take to somebody. And like I said, if you pick it up and nobody you know knows how to play this game, that's fine, because the game is going to take you through a whole game all the way through, instead of a lot of other games where it's either you hope you read the rule book right or your buddy knows how to play and can help teach you.
Yeah. Can you easily find information you need?
Yes and no. The rule book is great, I think, at trying to get as much information possible out there. There is some issues with flipping back and forth, unfortunately, in this one. I think that really you're going to know that there's tricky stuff in this game just because there's cards again, there's abilities, and sometimes looking them up can be a little weird. Like sometimes you're like, oh, I think this would be under attacks, but it's actually under charges. Some of that's a little finicky, but I think, the rule book is only 50-something pages. It's 52 pages, so like it is a pretty quick kind of read. A lot of it is some lore in the front as well, so you kind of have to dig through it a little bit sometimes for the corner cases, but they try to keep things, I think, pretty concise with it. And the timing sheet is really helpful for a lot of stuff.
How much of the game is symbol-based?
All the dice are symbol-based. So everything that you roll on a dice has a couple of different things on it. There's hammer. For attack dice, there's basically hammers, swords, single support, double support, and crits. For defense dice, there's shield, dodges, single, double support, and crits. Crits trump everything, really, in this game. Rolling crits are what you're digging for, or you're digging for whatever you need. So if your guy, you're rolling 2 dice and you need hammers, every hammer is a success. And then the single and double supports are kind of based on if you have models ganging up, which you can do with this with the Sepulchral Guard. But it is a symbol-based game for that regard. Sometimes you'll play a card that'll say roll a dice if you get this effect, if you roll a hammer or crit. So there is some symbols in this, but it's mostly a game of keywords and reading. I think that's a big thing.
So how many missions are there in this, or scenarios?
So there's only one way to play Underworlds, kind of. There's technically another edition that GW makes called Arena Mortis, but we won't talk about that. But really the way you play Underworlds is basically the same every time. You set up your boards, you bring your deck, you bring your warband, you put out objectives, and you play to who gets the most glory.
So there's no printed scenarios with specific objectives. It's on your cards.
No, and that sounds boring maybe, but it's not.
But it's different every single time you play.
Right, because
random variability.
You have randomness of what are you going to draw out of your deck. You only draw 3 objectives at the start of the first turn, and 5 of your power cards. Now there are ways to draw additional cards, but if you don't draw any, you're really only seeing 9 of your objective deck and 15 of your 20.
Yeah.
So you're never going to always draw the same hands. Dice always change up things. And what's really cool is because when you start the game, someone gets to place boards first, and then someone gets to place objectives. So if they know you're playing an objective-based game, they can maybe move the objectives a little bit and say, make it a little harder for you. I'm going to put them more in my zones. You have to come to me, and I want the fight. So that is really kind of nice. The way that you can play this game is whoever gets, but a lot of tournaments and stuff, it's best of 3, which is nice. So if you have a bad draw and you lose like 13-2, rack up again and go. And talking about the average length of this game, this is one of the reasons I really like this game. 15 to 20 minutes. If you want to play in a tournament, hour and a half for each round, and you'll play all 3 of your games very quickly. Like, even for somebody who doesn't really understand the rules and things, this game goes quick. And that's what I love so much about Underworlds as a game is it's so quick that we could sit here and play, and Adam could beat me so bad because I have bad dice, bad draws, whatever. I lost 18-2, and I'm like, you want to just do it again because it takes 15 minutes? It's that simplicity of the game of being easy to just take it off, rack it back up, and go again.
We've done that before where like one of us was getting absolutely blown out of the water at the beginning of the game. It's like, let's start over.
Right. And it's not hard because, again, everything's based on this grid system. So because it's all based on these hexes and grid, you just place your models back on the grid at the starting position and you just go again. And that is really, I think, one of the best things about this game. One of the reasons why, for me personally, I love this out of a lot of GW's like secondary games, I would say, or they're like more box games, because it has so much versatility in itself of how you can play and how quick it plays, where a lot of their other games may take a little bit too long for some people.
So is this box a complete game? So can you use this at an event?
Absolutely. So I talked about there's 3 ways to technically play Warhammer Underworlds. And like I said, in October of 2022, they kind of revamped this game to get new players back in. And there's what's called Rivals. Rivals is just using your basic Warband's deck of 32 cards, taking your Warband with them and going to an event with them. Most Warbands have been updated for that. The early 2 seasons, so original seasons of this game, they are not. So you could bring a Universal Rivals deck, which is something they've released that's really cool, where it's a deck that goes with any Warband, basically. Some are better than others with certain Warbands, but they're these Universal decks for like $30. You can pick it up and it changes the play style of your game.
It's really great that there's that option.
Right. And that's something that's really strong about Warhammer Underworlds, where if you really like a certain play style, you can lean into it. And that's where Nemesis and Championship come in. So Nemesis is you take your Warband's deck and you mix a Universal Rivals deck with it to get 12 objectives and 20 power cards. That is such a really cool thing that I really like about this game, and that's what I personally got. I played this when it came out in about 5-6 years ago. Liked the game, didn't enjoy it. It was a gotta buy it all kind of game to play. That's what Championship is for really. Championship is for the last couple of sets that have been released. Every card is free game basically to kind of build in your deck. There are deck limitations, but the Nemesis and the Rivals format brought me back into this game, and I love that I can play my Warband and expand the way they can play with all these Universal, Rivals decks. That to me is what really is so great, is that I don't have to go. I could go to a Championships event, take a Rivals deck, and maybe do okay. Now I'm not as fine-tuned as everyone else, but I can do that, and I think that's a really great thing for new players to be able to kind of go in and really go ahead.
Yeah. So what do you need to expand this game?
So here's a really cool thing about Underworlds now. If you like the Sepulchral Guard and you like this deck, you have to buy another damn product ever. You don't. You don't have to. If you're like, I never want to do anything more than play this Warband with this deck, you can do that. That's fine. Now, if you want more options, there's 2 ways you can go. Let's say you bought this box, you play through it, you're like, I don't like the Far Striders, I don't like the Sepulchral Guard, I want something else. You buy a new Warband. And every Warband comes with their own deck. Again, the older ones don't have full decks, so you will have to either you give them a Universal Rivals or mix it in for a Nemesis deck, and those are the old Shadespire and Nightvault Warbands. But hopefully, because they didn't revamp these, maybe they're doing that with more of them. Would be nice. But you can just keep buying new Warbands until you find one you like. And then if you're like me and you really like the Sepulchral Guard, and you're like, I don't want to play anything else. This is my favorite Warband. I really like them. I looked at other people. I just don't think that there's another Warband like this one for me to be able to play. Just buy Universal Rivals decks. At the time of release now, I'm pretty sure there's like 8 of them now. So there's a ton of options. Again, some of them are better than others with certain Warbands, but I actually really enjoy playing Nemesis and going, I wonder if I could make this combination work. And sometimes I play it and go, oh, that's garbage. Or sometimes I play it and I go, this is really different. I don't think anyone was going to expect it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just a really cool thing about Underworlds is that once you find the warband you like, I mean, if you don't want to, you don't have to buy more.
Yeah.
I'm a pretty big collector. I like collecting these. I own a lot of the warbands,
Mm-hmm.
but I've kind of settled to a point where now I'm like, I play the same 3 that I really enjoy.
Mm-hmm.
Now I just pick up my rival and Universal Rivals decks when they release and pop those in and keep playing with those.
Maybe go to like if you benefit from having a Warhammer store nearby or even just a local game shop, go and ask them, if anybody has any knowledge about the different war bands, kind of see what they do, see what matches your play style, because everybody's got a different thing that they like to achieve.
I will say, if you really want to look online, it's called underworldsdb.com. It's a deck builder that's being released and updated with new cards all the time. Search for that warband and then pop open their deck and say just use only the deck and look at their cards. It'll show you the fighter cards and everything, and that's really helpful to kind of get an understanding of maybe how they play. Again, with newer players, it might be a little bit but difficult to understand some of the things. But the one thing I do like is a lot of the warbands like fighter cards are not always very complicated. The decks are what make things a little bit more complicated.
So who is this box set for?
So I'm gonna go for 2 kinds of people: people who already play Underworlds and people who don't. If you don't play Underworlds, this is an amazing way to get into the game. It is only $60. A lot of their new, what they call 2-player core boxes that they release. The way Underworlds kind of works is they do a season, which lasts about 6 months, and it's basically a 2-player box set with 2 war bands, and then 2 single individual war bands, and then they shuffle through. Those are $100 usually. This is only $60. If you really want to just try it, I think this is a really good buy for you.
Maybe split it with a friend if
really what's nice about this is if you wanted to get your own boards and stuff and go on eBay and just pick up some extra ones, that's all you need. You just need dice, you need that, and if you got your deck and your warband, you're good to go. There's not a whole lot you need from it, for people who already play Underworlds and do own these models, I don't know if the value is there necessarily. It does have old Night Vault boards that are now tournament legal again, which is really nice if you don't own those boards and you want them again. But if you own these warbands, it can be a little bit hard maybe to shove down $60 for just 2 decks. But these have replaced old decks basically, and I think Games Workshop has specifically said these are now the only decks you can play with these warbands. But these newer decks, I think, are going to overtake them. So if you do like these warbands, maybe pick it up. I think if you want just the decks, someone's probably selling them online maybe who wants to split a box and get the specific decks that you want. But, $60 isn't bad, I think. I think the value is here even for older players just to have, maybe you already own the models. You can sell them off to somebody else just to get what you need. But, this is a good value at $60.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess, it's strange to ask you this question since you're, you're an expert on Underworlds, but, would you keep playing based on this box alone? So let's say if this had been your introduction into the game, would this keep you going?
I'm going to say yes. So I this might be one of my favorite games of all time. I really love Warhammer Underworlds. I think it is so distinct in the skirmish game board game market. It's so
pretty unique.
Yeah, it's unique. It doesn't play like a lot of other stuff that Games Workshop makes. In fact, nothing else they make is like this.
No.
In any way, shape, or form. And I think it really lends itself to being so kind of... I think the rule set is a little simple. I think the depth comes in the strategy and the deck building. I think when we first played the first time, you were like, there's not a lot to
Yeah.
it. But then once you got in the decks, it's like, oh, this is kind of
Yeah.
a lot sometimes to do. But I think once you get that kind of set down, it's not a bad game. It's very quick, like I said. So if you just want to play it really quickly, play it with some friends, you can.
Mm-hmm.
For me personally, I really like the Spulchral Guard out of this set. I'm not as huge a fan of the Farstriders in this set. I think they're cool. They're just not for me personally. They only have 3 models, and I'm not a big elite warband kind of guy. I kind of like a couple more models than that. But I think both of them are pretty decent warbands to get started, especially the Spulchral Guard. I mean, gorgeous models, fun to play. Like, yeah, I can't say enough good things about them.
Well, I think, I mean, for me personally, I'm going to grab this set. Can't resist.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, if any of you have thoughts about the Warhammer Underworlds starter box or any of their other products, please put them in the comments down below. Have a discussion about the game as a whole, because we certainly enjoy it. Yeah. Hopefully you do too.